everybody. Good morning. As we center our hearts and minds for worship, hear these words from Psalm 23. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for her name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now here are some announcements for our lives together. If you want to get updates from us via email, or you just want to be connected to us, you can fill out a connect card, and they are located on the back table. If you're joining us on the Zoom, there will be one dropped in the chat. The link will be dropped in the chat, and they will also be passed around during offering in the collection plate. The Saturday scripture study is currently on a hiatus, so stay tuned for updates. Not Sunday school is taking a break until October 29th, and it will resume again. Next Sunday, October 22nd, remember we are doing outdoor worship at Lane and David's. So please don't come here. You will be by yourself, locked out on the sidewalk. Unless it's raining. If it's raining, then come here. We do need kids' room volunteers, and if you want to do that, you can scan the QR code that's located inside your bulletin to sign up. We also need Zoom volunteers or Zoomers. So talk to Patrick if you are interested in running the Zoom. If you want to feed hungry college students by providing UKirk dinners, you can find the link to sign up for that in the newsletter. On Saturday, October 21st at St. John UMC, there will be the Southwest Tennessee Creation Care Convention. So if you want to learn more about how to take care of the planet and the things on it, then that would be a good thing to sign up for, and the post for that and the link is on our social media page. Camp food and cocktails to benefit Pinecrest at Shady Grove Presbyterian is on Sunday, November 5th from 4 to 6 p.m. Boo Fest happening on Halloween night at 6 p.m. You are all invited, kids and kids at heart. There's going to be, of course, trick-or-treating, some dancing, a movie, lots of fun things. And if you want to volunteer for that, because we do need volunteers, all hands on deck, the QR code for that is on the back of your bulletin. Neighborhood Church has a writers group that will start meeting on Thursdays from 8:30 to 10 here at the church. If you want more information about that, talk to Meredith. Neighborhood Church is also starting a book club that will be kicking off next month. And it's called Woven, Nurturing a Faith Your Kids Don't Have to Heal From. And you can also talk to Meredith to find out more information about that. Now I ask you to rise in body or spirit as we bring in the light. When we are full of joy and hope,
God needs us.
When we suffer and feel helpless,
God needs us.
when we are fulfilled and celebratory,
God needs us.
when we feel isolated and numb,
God needs us always.
come, let us worship the God of love together.
Please stay standing for our opening hymn, which is number 6-9. Here I am, Lord. Page 6-9.
Good morning. Well, since we have two churches here today, my name is Mark Hamilton. I'm an elder, well, have been an elder, not serving at the time, ordained elder, current treasurer of Evergreen. This is a stewardship moment, but since we have two churches here, I don't think Meredith would mind me just say, wherever I might say Evergreen, just fill in neighborhood church. I'm sure it's everybody's season right now to talk about getting budgets together for the next year and programs and the like. So, but Linda and I moved to Memphis in 1987. It was, and so that makes it 36 years. And later that year, we joined Evergreen. Last week, Catherine Hutchison, another longtime member, shared some of the things that brought her to Evergreen, her and Lee, and some of the things that are important to them, or has been important for over the years. And so, I'm not going to go too much into the past, but maybe relate the past to maybe the present for some people. Because when we moved here, both Linda and I were in our early 30s, so here I am in my late 60s. But it's a different perspective, and I can certainly relate the position that we were in at that time, having our first child. But when you go to set budgets and things like that, it's hard because you're living paycheck to paycheck. You're trying to make sure that you take care of the hierarchy of needs, as they call it, right? Shelter and food and education and whatnot. But I do remember very early on when I was in my 30s, I was asked to be stewardship chair. So that was, wow, okay. And that was a different Evergreen then because we had several hundred members, a lot of longtime members, And I remember a conversation I had with one of the older members that was on the stewardship committee, and saying, what do I say, to people, particularly the younger people, if you've asked me to be the chair, to try to appeal to those folks. And I'll never forget this perspective that this person gave was the person probably about the age I am now, right, saying, well, the way we got to where we are today was that we made sure that giving to the church was as important as those other top hierarchy of needs. So when it came to budgeting for food and education and roof over your head, there was a spot there for Evergreen. So that's something I want to share. And that's worked over the years, so our giving has grown as we have grown. And it's just a way to make sure, I guess the other thing I want to point out is that don't liken it, we're a nonprofit, right? But we're a church. And when you go to the Overton Park Shell, wonderful institution, or if you go to any other nonprofit and they ask for a donation, and you throw a $5 bill or a $10 bill into the bucket, it's a little bit different, I would argue, than what we're asking you to do here. And again, speaking from both churches. Because we depend really totally on what the members give. Yes, visitors may come and be generous and whatnot. Bequests may happen. But the reality is that this church, if it's of value to you, if it's something that's part of the fabric of who you are and the family that you're a part of, I ask you to look at it that way. So rather than throwing a $10 bill into the bucket, next time maybe if there's ways to figure out how to give more, the next time you do a guilty pleasure, schedule a guilty pleasure for Evergreen or neighborhood. Just the thought on stewardship, because the importance of making sure that we get pledges also, and Patrick, thank you so much for the letter that you put out, is so important for myself and David, our bookkeeper, and to present to session a budget. It's very hard to make a budget if we don't have a reasonable projection of our income. So that's the other, because some people will tell me, well, I'm not going to pledge, but I'm going to give. And I try to gently say, well, I'd kind of like to know what you're going to give. So we can make that budget. But anyway, faithfully, I'm asking you to think of those things, those thoughts, and no matter what age you are, what position you're in, whatever you're giving, if it's to that point where it kind of, ouch, I think that's the right amount. Thank you. Oh, or I stay up here. All right. In sharing the peace of Christ, we express the reconciliation, unity, and love that come from God. And we open ourselves to the power of God's love to heal our brokenness and make us agents of that love in the world. Since God has forgiven us in Christ, let us forgive one another. And this is certainly appropriate right now, needing peace in the world. So the peace of Christ be with you.
And also with you.
And now we can pass the peace and just be mindful of what people are comfortable with.
Yeah, well, I'm a professor, but then I will say,
Ooh, I hate staying there prior.
There was a rental Friday. Yeah. And we have another one the week after next. So the Friday after.
I mean, I was in and out of meetings. Are you not here? But I was 15 minutes you've been here. Y'all will be with you. Peace with you.
It's pretty. I'm so excited that it actually feels like fall. like boots and sweaters.
too long. One weekend away.
At least, yeah.
Zoomer. Zoomies. Got the zoomies over here.
Yeah, we got Jan and MJ and the babies.
Good morning. Peace.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Hey. Some pictures.
Oddly enough.
This is.
I don't think I'm wearing any JGL today,
I
strangely.
think everything is JJ.
That's normally not a bad guess. No, this was, remember that brand at Target, Massimo?
Oh, yeah.
I got this Target thing, but it was a Massimo brand with a big lot of them.
Yeah.
And my childhood best friend who lives in Florida independently got one. And we both are obsessed with ours. And it took us a couple of years to realize that we both like love the same cardigan. So then we had this like contest of trying to find them on eBay because they don't make them. You know, it's been like 10 years since they've made them. So we've got a few extras that we've got.
That's really cute.
Thank you. It's a good like all weather.
Oh, yeah.
I can wear it even when it's not even really that cold. I was talking about going to Shakespeare in the Park today. And Linda's like, I don't know, it's a little cold.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Good morning. I know everybody's very excited to see all these friends and all these faces and stuff. Let's see. We have like maybe 2 volunteers, 2 kids, two adult volunteers that like to come sit with us. There's one. I need one more. One more. Come on. Y'all step it up for my volunteers now. Yeah. All right, y'all. So today, for the people out here, what we did at the beginning of today, we went outside and we found prayer rocks, right? And these rocks represented whenever they get worried, whenever they have anxiety, they know to grab these rocks and they pray. And so right now we're actually painting and creating and customizing these rocks. So I want to ask y'all a question really quickly. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, it says, cast your cares upon him because he cares for you. What do you think that means? What do you think it means to cast your cares upon God? Mr. Matthew, Miss Betty, what's your name? Francis. What do you think that means? Prayers, to pray to God. Yes, when you're worried. Mm-hmm. What do you guys got? One more thing. Anybody? Miss Sylvia, you got anything? Wow. Remember, he's always there for you. Even if you're busy, guess what? God is never too busy for you, right? So we can always cast our cares on God. And I know even as kids, like our adults think that we don't have worries or that we don't have stuff going on, but we do have stuff. Sometimes our pencil isn't sharpened the way we want it to be sharpened, or we don't have the number of pencils that we want, all that different stuff.
What I tell Sylvia sometimes in the morning is to remember that when she's having a bad day, God is right over her shoulder like he is right now. And at the exact same time, God's standing over my shoulder.
Protecting both of you.
And we're both together.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So
surviving our situation together.
Yes.
We don't know, what the other's doing.
Yeah.
We're part of the same system.
And so to think about that, surviving the situation together, we've kind of done this before. I think you guys were here when we did this before. So this piece of yarn, it's our prayer yarn. So it's gonna start with me. I'm gonna hold this in. And I'm going to say a worry that I have. I know you guys had fall break this past week and you're going to school this upcoming Monday, so maybe you're worried about getting back acclimated to school or waking up early in the morning or something. But I'm going to say a worry and then we're going to pass it around. That could be a worry. But I'm going to say my first one. Okay, my worry is that it's cold and I don't really like the cold. So can we get a little bit warmer? And I'm going to pass it to Francis. If you get a question wrong, okay, yeah, hold your hand. You're worried about getting sick, okay. What do you got, Miss Sylvia?
I'm worried about losing my lizards.
Losing your lizards, okay. My mom is actually scared of lizards. That's funny. And baby Roz, let's...
This really sweet berry.
Yeah. Baby Roz is worried about always having to have her shoes on because we have to fight to put her shoes on all the time. And Mr. Matthew, what is your worry? Was something that you maybe worried about last week? You were worried about the script just a minute ago, guys. They're putting on the puppet show later on, by the way, and they were just in here talking about the script.
And he's kind of using to put my in my classroom.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the actors not being able to read the script.
So they need to. Y'all have to work together as a team. So
No, I'm person.
different ways. I'm trying to get them to work as a team, y'all. It's a process. But okay, let me get the last piece. You hold yours. Now, y'all, look at this. We're all connected. One thing about us is we all have worries, and we can cast all of these worries on God. It is a word. It's a prayer wheel, but we're sharing our words. So I'm going to pray really quickly, and then we're going to go back to finish coloring our prayer rocks. All right. God, thank you for today. God, thank you for Matthew, Betty, Sylvia, Francis, Rosalind. We ask that you bless them and lead them in the way that you want them to go. We ask that you help them to not worry so much and help them to always remember that they can cast their cares on you and that no matter what, you are always there. Amen. All right, y'all. Let's go back to the back and let's finish our prayer. Thank y'all. And thank you, volunteers, as well. Oh, watch your feet. Watch yourself. Let it go.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan. We're going to be reading from Romans chapter 12. I appeal to you therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercy of God, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual work. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of yourself more highly than you ought to think, but think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as one body, we have many members, and not all the members have the same function. So we, who are many, are one body in Christ. And individually, we are members of one another. We have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. Prophecy in proportion to faith, ministry in ministry, the teacher in teaching, the exhorter in exhortation, the giver in generosity, the leader in diligence, the compassionate in cheerfulness. So, let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit and serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in suffering. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints. Extend hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," says the Lord. No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads, and do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Good morning. People that had the pleasure of meeting it, I'm Patrick. I'm the pastor at Evergreen, and I am really thrilled this morning that Meredith and I get to do a bit of a shared sermon here. So Evergreen has been in this series of exploring the various ways that we encounter God in our lives. And this Sunday, I was already thinking about talking a little bit about what it means to have a sense of call, what it means to have purpose and discerning our calling. And then when Meredith and I started chatting about teaming up, it was like, oh, this is delightfully perfect. So it's always great when plans start to work and take shape and get even better than you'd imagined them. I love Paul's his section of Romans 12 right here, and this beautiful affirmation of what a beloved community can be, and how different folks have different gifts to bring to the table, and how we can't just do everything ourselves. I know that I'm the kind of person that I don't like to ask people because I don't, for help, because I don't want to put people out, but also it's because I want to control everything, and I don't like admitting that. But here, Paul kind of says, like, no, there's a lot of gifts in a beloved community. There's a point to that. And it's in sharing your gifts, and it's in being in community together, it's in loving one another that we really find the ways that God is calling us and calling us towards something beautiful. I was, a few years ago, I was at a retreat in Ghost Ranch out in New Mexico, and this was a really unique kind of holy space where it was folks that had just been on this year-long volunteer program and had come back to the States, and maybe they served abroad or they served, in a major city here in the U.S., and now they're out into this desert area where the stars are incredible and the cell service is terrible, and they're kind of forced to think and reckon a bit with what their year was like, and what was the good and the bad and the ugly of their volunteer year, and how were they broken open to learn something new about themselves. And these were all young adults, and they mostly, early 20s, a lot of them in that beautiful but like terribly anxiety-inducing stage of like, what do I do with life, and what's next, and how do I, sign up for this test and get a good enough score to go this way, or do I stay close to family, or do I have an adventure, how do I make life work, and where's God in the midst of this? And one of them just kept talking about, I just got to find my call, I just got to find my call, I just got to find my call. And one of my colleagues finally just said, I have bad news for you. You don't have one call. And he was just like, you kind of saw this. his face, just this joy and expectation just left. And my colleague said, you have thousands of calls in your life. God's going to call you to thousands of things. And I thought that would be good news for this young man, but instead he just went, dang it! And just marched off to take another one of those silly walks in the desert to try to figure out what God wants him to do. But the beautiful good news of what Paul is saying is that we are all we're involved in that same work in the Spirit. The Spirit is up to the same thing and singing the same song, and we just get to bring our instruments to that song and join in the beautiful melody, and that is an incredible gift. And as we talk a little bit about where we find God in our callings, Pastor Meredith and I are each going to share a little bit about our own story of calling the ministry. So turn it over to my friend and colleague Meredith.
It was fun to think about what to share, because I think so often I started pastoring in January of 2020, and I don't always have the opportunity to say, oh, this is how I got here, and that story actually starts a lot longer than 2019. And so when I was 16 years old, I was at a youth camp, as we were wont to do, in the 90s. And there was a worship service one night of the camp, and the pastor was preaching to all of these, hundreds of youth. And at some point, whatever he said, he invited people who felt called to full-time Christian ministry to stand up in the service. And I did not know at the moment what that meant or what that would look like, but I just knew I could not stay seated. I knew that I had to stand up in some way, and that I just knew that God's love was real to me, and that I wanted to be a part of communicating that to other people in whatever way that looked. Now, for me, because my faith tradition is within the Southern Baptist denomination, that was really limited of what full-time Christian ministry could look like. And so really the only option was to be a children's pastor or a missionary. And so I was like, I love other cultures and traveling. I'm going to be a missionary then. And this made a lot of sense. And I set my whole life up that I was going to go overseas. And I went to college, and I knew that I needed a skill so that I could be a missionary and be practically helpful. And so I decided I was going to be a nurse. And every semester of nursing school, I would reconfigure my entire schedule. What would happen if I changed my major to history? Because the truth was, I hated it. I hated nursing school, and it was so hard. And I had sort of just been brought up with this mentality like, you have to do the hard thing. You have to do the hardest things, because that's what's godly. And so I stuck with it, and I finished nursing school. And I decided that I was going to keep pursuing a life overseas in some kind of way. And when I graduated from college in 2006, I moved to Memphis. And pretty quickly on, I got connected with the families that were planning neighborhood church. And then it would be in 2007 that I spent a month in Afghanistan and was sort of preparing to go be like a public health nurse in Afghanistan. And I loved it, and the culture was beautiful, and it was an incredible experience. But I realized I was 22 years old, I had barely lived on my own, and anytime you had to eat something in Afghanistan, it was just an ordeal. Like, you were boiling vegetables in iodine, and people were making bread from scratch, and there was just a lot happening of like what it meant to just live in another country, let alone like minister, that I just was like, I don't think I'm ready for this. So let me go back to Memphis and let me grow up. And then that's when I will go overseas. And so I came back to Memphis and then fell in love with Memphis and spent the next 15 years working full-time as a registered nurse, being a part of neighborhood church, and realizing, oh wait, like, I actually really love church and like the local church. And I would go to the sunrise service at the Lovett Shell that there was a joint service. And I remember seeing women in robes, and then even your former pastor, Lucy, preached at one of the sunrise services. And I just remember being a little bit jealous because these women knew that they could do this. Like, when they were 18, like they could go to college and major in religion or Christian studies, versus when I was in college, I went to all the like extra lectures and things about the Bible or Christian studies, and I remember my roommate's boyfriend, he told me, you would make a really good pastor's wife one day, because you're so interested in the Bible and in the church. And so I found my purpose in nursing, and I even though I did not love it to begin with, thankfully, nursing is a broad field and God's grace is broad. And I found a way to see like healthcare as hospitality and welcome, and found a place where I could serve. But when the opportunity came up in 2019 about neighborhood church and the direction we were going to go in, and whether we would replace our pastor, there was just a lot of discernment in that year, in that season, and I was thankful that people in my community said that I had these gifts, and they believed in me that I could do this job. But one of the more impactful pieces of that process was I got to participate in a discernment circle. And I don't know if anyone has done that before, but it was a group of 6 to 8 people who do this as a ministry, and you just sit in this circle and you come with a question. And so my question was, should I be a pastor? And they just asked questions. And it was for 2 hours, and they don't provide any sort of response to your answers. They just keep asking you good questions to help sort of dig out what's inside of you. And they write down everything And I think what just came back was the truth of when I was 16 that I believed in the God of love, and I wanted to be a part of sharing who that God was. And so that is how I got here into this role. And then this question, where have I met God? And I think what I have found is just like that God's surprises have been much better than the plans that I made for my life. And that I could say that I've met God in all of you, or in patients, or in people, or in the city, or around the world. But I think when I really think about where I have met God, it has been in trust and in choosing to believe that God is working all things together for good, that all shall be well. And I know that feels complicated and a bit mysterious at times to say, but I think that trust has been the place that God has met me, and I'm grateful for it. So that is how I got here and how I've met God, and now I'm going to turn it back over to Patrick for his story.
My story of call also began in the 90s. I grew up in this small town in Northeast Tennessee, a town called Greenville, and I was really fortunate. I didn't realize growing up how much of a 70s radical I had as we called him a director of Christian education, a DCE, who was kind of our children's and youth faith formation person. Someone who had been active as a strong ally up in Chicago in civil rights, someone who lived very simply, someone who was on the cutting edge in a lot of ways, but I didn't quite wrap my head around it because I didn't have the vocabulary to fully understand what all he was about. And he would take us on these things in the summer, the high school youth. They were mission trips, but he had a different name for them. A name that's not good, because if you Google it, you get really bad Google images. He called them work camps. But our first one that I got to go on, I had just finished 8th grade, rising freshman, and we went out to Leadville, Colorado, actually, Susan. And this is the highest town in the U.S. We were out there to work with Habitat for Humanity, and First Presbyterian Church of Leadville is up on this hill. It's a beautiful location, and they have a lodge. And at this lodge, groups can come and they can stay just for some sort of retreat, because you're looking right at the Rockies, you're looking right at Mount Elbert, Mount Massive, some of the biggest mountains in that mountain range. And there's a playground. They could have all these summer programs for the kids in the area, because a lot of parts of Leadville are walkable for kids to come to the playground. And so we did some work with the local kids, and we worked on the Habitat house just a couple blocks from the church. And it was one of those experiences where everything is planned within an inch of its life, right? You're working all day, and then you're part of a group that does, this day you do dinner, this day you clean up from dinner, this day you got to clean the bathrooms. So you're doing that, and any downtime that you've got. After dinner, there's small groups. After small groups, there's evening vespers, which are kind of like worship light, right? It was one of those nights. It was a Vespers night where I really should have been so exhausted, like everyone else, that I really just should have just had that teenager brain of like, I'm just going to sit in this seat and kind of float through this so I can eventually go back to bed, and then tomorrow is a new day. But there was always one youth that would help our DCE, Alan, lead the Vespers. And that night, I had volunteered. Alan comes up to me, and he has these homemade stoles. This one in particular, I'll never forget it. It was felt. It was dark green. It had little Christian images, a little fishy, a little cross, all that, in different colors. That was hot glue gunned on, and when you could like feel the hot glue coming out from under the felt, and it would kind of scratch you. He put that around my neck. He was like, "Hey, you're gonna help lead Vespers," and it was just this. It was this weird. It was almost like, I'm not a video game person, but almost like when you get more lives in a video game, like I was like, I'm all ready to go now. I got my little itchy green felt on, and I felt something that night. And so Alan, I go up to him after Vespers, and I said, Alan, could I talk about maybe what being, in ministry is like? And God love him, I know he had to be exhausted. Like since that moment, I'd done some time in youth ministry. Just how I said that. And I know what it means to just be so exhausted and not have any more energy. And his eyes were so tired, but he said, yeah, we have time to talk. So we went and sat outside at a picnic table, and we just chatted for about an hour on what on earth it might look like to be called to ministry. And I'm so appreciative that when I was the summer between 8th and 9th grade, with my super Bieber frosted tip haircut going on, that like, it could have just been a whim. It could have just been impulsive. But he took time to talk with me about that beginning of the sermon. Of course, I go home and I tell friends, I tell family, and everyone said, oh, it's just a phase, right? It's just a phase. It's calling to ministry just a phase. There are moments where I was like, I kind of wish it had been just a phase. But it's amazing that what I thought I might be called to back then in high school, in vocational ministry, even when I taught it and I said, no, I'm going to design cars. I know nothing about cars, but I'm going to design cars. That seems cool. Or, oh, I'm going to design boats. I know nothing about boats. I've never driven one, but those look cool. I'll design those. And I was looking all at industrial design. I kept coming back to ministry. I thought, oh, no, I'll just do the PhD route. I want to be a teacher. No, the church just kept coming back. And I look at what I actually get to do with my life and for a living, and that's pretty cool. That is pretty magnificent. And so, like Meredith, I see God in many conversations that I have with a lot of you and with people who just pop in during office hours, through beautiful moments of worship, through moments when folks always surprise me, moments when I want to come in after a night that was a little sleepless and having a few existential crises about the way of the world, and one conversation for 10 minutes makes me remember how beautiful the world really can be, and that my bad mood was just fleeting, and it's gone. Nadia Bolz-Weber, one of my favorite authors and preachers and pastors, she talks about she's a Lutheran pastor, in the little clergy college, she talks about that little white box being a screen on which people play the movies of their lives, and she has the honor of getting to watch them with them, and there's something really magnificent and beautiful about that.
So I'm just going to close us out, and I think sometimes that word calling, it does have complicated emotions around it for different people, and so I just acknowledge that. One thing that I am grateful for within my faith tradition is the idea of this priesthood of all believers, right? That everybody is in, and everybody gets to play on the field, and I definitely don't have a lot of respect for hierarchy in the church, for better or worse sometimes. But we acknowledge that we have felt this calling into ministry, but I'm so grateful Patrick started off with the idea that there are 1,000 calls in our lives. And that question of like, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? I feel like it comes in any moment, whether it's in college or in your 30s or in further along in midlife or in retirement, and just trying to see what is it that I'm supposed to do. And I think it seems on the outside that some people seem like it's really easy for them to figure it out, and whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I think for others of us, we do struggle with this. I remember this quote was really big by Frederick Buechner when I was younger. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. And that quote puts a lot of pressure, I think, on us. And I would just like to suggest that maybe calling can be a little bit quieter sometimes. That deep gladness and deep hunger is around tables and on walks and sitting in waiting rooms. And sometimes it's in spreadsheets and really good budgets and really amazing stewardship teams. That calling can come in like making an environment safe or engineering clean water. That there's just so many places where maybe you don't always feel deep gladness, and that's okay, because maybe it's going to come out in other places, and maybe it'll be a different season where that rings a little bit more true, this quote. And, one thing that I was told when I was younger that helped me a lot was that I didn't really need to be worried about being called to a particular vocation, because I was called to a relationship with God. And that relationship would take me throughout my life. And that was what I was meant to be faithful to, was my relationship with God and with love and how that would play out in my life. And it could look 1,000 different ways, but I didn't have to find my identity in any of them. And being a nurse, sometimes they talk about that, being a special calling or pastor, these are some big words that you can really sink your identity into if you really want to. But in the end, I hope that you can just recognize your calling as beloved. And sometimes in the United States, we tend to talk about church and like working for God or investing in the kingdom. And we use a lot of business words when it comes to our relationship with God. And I think that does us a real disservice, because if we're working for God, that means we can get fired at any point, right? We can be out. Like, there's a performance evaluation, right? And you may not measure up. And so I think whatever season you're in, trying to imagine what the next right step is for you, I think more imagine not a boss, but a really good parent who just rolls out a huge piece of butcher paper and dumps a load of crayons on the floor and just says, "What do you want to do? I just want to do it together." And so do it. Do whatever in the name of love and with God, knowing you're not alone. And also, one thing that you have that a lot of people don't is a community that loves you and will support you while you figure it out. So I wanted to also share this Parker Palmer quote, because he has a really good book, Let Your Life Speak, if you're kind of struggling at the moment. He says, discovering vocation does not mean scrambling towards some prize just beyond my reach, but accepting the treasure of true self I already possess. And so I invite you to discover what is the treasure of the true self that you already possess.
Here at Evergreen, we have a tradition of silence, and what a better time than right now to think about that and our true self and the words that have been spoken by our pastors and our 1,000 calls, and the words that are unspoken. So if you would sit in your seat and relax, put your back against your chair, put your feet down, wiggle your shoulders, take a deep breath in, a deep breath out, and I will bring us in and bring us out.
May we go to God with our offering. Let's pray. Gracious God, for the many gifts that we have been given, the gift of beautiful music, the gift of our callings, the gifts of a beautiful day, the gifts of friendship, the gifts of community, we give you thanks. May all that we have to share go for your glory, your honor, your peace and justice in this world. Amen.
Please stand for the doxology. The lyrics are people. I invite you to rise for our closing hymn, hymn 749. 749. Receive this benediction if you like to open up your hands. May we remember we are called to act with justice. We are called to love tenderly. We are called to serve one another. We are called to walk humbly with God. And we are called to live our life with our God whose name is love. And may we do work that reminds us of that. Go in peace.
Bye, thank you.
I'll celebrate you.